started. As you see on the first slide, we have a message for all of you that this session is being recorded. By participating in this session, you are consenting to the recording, retention, and use of the session. Our agenda for the day. Oh my goodness, I'm having trouble with my computer. There we go. Our agenda for the day is first we have a presentation from WestEd about Carnegie Math Pathways. It's a really exciting math initiative we're working on that I think you're all going to be really interested in. And then we're going to do some reminders about end of year tasks, such as budget revisions and fourth quarter QERs, things like that. And then we'll wrap up. We'll take questions along the way. If you are not scheduled to speak, please mute yourself. Thank you. And let's get started. Did you want to take the share, Anne?
Yes, I think Dan, you're gonna?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So you know what, Dan, I'm gonna just say something for 15 seconds and then I'll hand it over to you.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much. I'm Ann Edwards at WestEd. And as Christine mentioned, we've been working with you all on a new project we're really, really excited about. It's part of the larger Carnegie Math Pathways group, but specifically we're working on a course that's called the Adult Numeracy in the Digital Era course, or we call it ANDY. And we are currently developing and testing it in partnership with Pennsylvania. And so what we're going to be telling you about today is an opportunity for your agencies and for the instructors in your agencies to be able to learn more about it and hopefully participate. So I'm going to hand it over to Dan.
All right. Thank you, Anne. I will first say that I am a little less familiar with Teams, so hopefully you can see my screen. And since I cannot see anything, I'm gonna, perfect, thank you. Cool, so yeah, Anne gave a little bit of background on the Andy work, but part of the introduction, just to give a little bit of background on WestEd and Carnegie Math Pathways, which you see on our slide here. WestEd is a research, development, and we provide services and education. We have a strong focus on equity and improving learning, both for children and adults. For this project, the ANDY stands for Adult Numeracy in the Digital Era. The goal of this work is to develop and evaluate an adult education course in mathematics that is to be delivered online, in person, blended formats such as HyFlex, with a focus on numeracy and digital literacy. Importantly, the project includes very targeted professional learning to support instructors with the knowledge and instructional practices to effectively teach the course. The design principles for the ANDY course were informed by the admittedly limited research in adult ed, far less studied than K-12 and other sectors of higher ed, and we really wanted to take an asset-based framing to the design for adult learners. The sort of key elements of the design are first that the course is aligned and relevant, aligned in ways that recognize students' goals of passing high school equivalency exams, and that while this provides a basis for student motivation, adult learners want to feel that they are progressing towards that goal. We know that adult learners have a wealth of life experience that can be recognized with mathematics around familiar context. We know that a part of that alignment means recognizing that students are balancing multiple responsibilities and schedules. So it was important to integrate an online component, both for convenience of access, but also to include digital literacy elements to help prepare students for an increasingly digital world and digital workspaces. The course is designed to be highly interactive and participatory, to recognize that wealth of life experiences that students bring to the classroom. And the Andy course content is designed to be collaborative, focusing on students engaging in mathematical discourse. The course emphasizes relationships and communities. One of the significant advantages of the design is that students build stronger student-instructor relationships, as well as relationships with their peers through discussion that supports their mathematics learning. As a former higher ed instructor myself, I was fortunate enough to teach a class that has significantly informed the design of the Andy course. And I can confirm that transitioning to this kind of instruction allowed me to get to know my students much better, both in a personal level, but then also get to know them much more as learners of mathematics and know where they were struggling and when they were learning and growing in confidence. Throughout the design principles, there's a common thread of online learning content. We want to provide students an opportunity to practice at a time that works for them and learn with immediate feedback, explanations, and solutions in a system that adapts as it recognizes where students are struggling and where students are proficient to deliver or omit content as needed. For a course overview, the content is targeting EFL 4, CCR levels C and D, and digital literacy through the North Star content, as well as other interactions within the online platform. And it includes activities and routines that are incorporated to support social and emotional learning for students, as well as English language learners. The course topics are listed here. I can provide this as needed afterwards. I can share the slides so that you wouldn't need to jot these down. But the topics are selected to be both areas of need for the targeted levels and foundational for opening the door to subsequent topics. Throughout the pilot courses, we've already seen some variation in the course structure, but the original design is intended to last 10 weeks, where students meet typically 3 times a week for 90 minutes. So the anticipation is 45 hours of synchronous work with students each week for a total of 45 contact hours. Just to give a sense of a class or a lesson, a typical collaboration, which is what we call the synchronous times that instructors spend with students, would see a lesson launch where instructors introduced a context or a problem situation that is familiar to adult learners. An example here is about mixing colors of paint in a lesson on proportions. And then students would often work in either groups or pairs, which allows them to bring a variety of mathematical ideas to get started on the task. This includes opportunities for making and discussing multiple representations, and students are prompted for using and comparing various approaches to solve the task, with the goal of making explicit connections to mathematical procedures and algorithms. The collaboration concludes with closing reflections for both mathematics of the lesson and student confidence with the lesson content. And of course, this can be completed either fully face-to-face or fully virtually as well. Some of the feedback that we've gotten from instructors who participated in our pilot offering is that it is easy to teach this course with the online platform through HyFlex, and that teacher materials are a great resource. One of the comments is that students love the layout, the multiple chances that they get, and that's in the online platform, and seeing the solution. They were a little hesitant with the collaboration and hated that there was not just one answer, but they were talking way more than normal. Another instructor said, I love completing the growth mindset activity with my students. It resonated so well with the students. It really got the students to look at their math smarts in a new light, and that it was a great activity. The instructor experience is very important. So we asked Lauren Thatcher, one of the pilot instructors, to join our call here and share some of her takeaways from the course. Lauren?
Good morning. Again, I'm Lauren Thatcher. I'm from Northampton County Community College, and I teach a HyFlex class. So at any given day, I could have all my students in person or a mix of some online and in person. I had about 7 students finish this class with us this spring that we started in March. The HyFlex has been awesome because I didn't have to create extra activities that matched perfectly. I would pull up the Andy system, go into the online setting that my online students would see. I'd project that onto my smartboard, and then my in-person students would have a paper version of that, and we'd be able to go through together. If I had multiple students online, they'd be their own group. Or if I only had one person online, then we'd kind of take the laptop to whatever group they were working with. And it just worked out really well. I only taught 2 days a week. So more than 10 weeks would have been preferable for us. We did squeeze all of the units in, but I had to half some of the collaborations to make them all fit. All 7 of my students that finished this course went up at least 3 points in their CASAS, and 1 went up as much as 14 points. And we had 4 of those students make an EFL gain. The rest of those ones were going from a low 4 to a high 4. So I did have students that were an EFL of 2, 3, 4, and 5 starting this process in March. My student that was a level 2 bumped all the way up to level 3. My student that was a 3 bumped to a level 4. My other student who was a 3 also bumped to a level 4. My student that was a 5 bumped to a level 6. And then I had the rest of the students that were in 4 stayed in 4. I definitely agree with the fact that it is meant for EFL 4 and up. My EFL 2 and 3 really struggled, but they were supported by the rest of their classmates. And one of my students was actually sad that class ended yesterday because he said summer session's not going to be the same without the same group of people coming back. So we really enjoyed the process. And it was just really fun. We really liked it.
Wow, thanks, Lauren.
Yeah, thanks, Lauren. And thank you for letting me come out and observe your class and talk to some of your students. I did want to share some of the, let me get the right place there, share some of the feedback that we've heard from students thus far. We've, of course, had the opportunity to talk to students both during focus groups and then also in student interviews. So some of the things that we've heard here, the best part is what we learn. I'm surprised because I never thought I could do one problem like that. I'm happy because the teacher helps us to not be scared of it. Another student I like working with other people too. We all brainstorm together how to do a problem, and it helps all of us when we come down to the right answer. And then one more quote from a student: group work in the class is a lot better than sitting there listening to a teacher like in other classes I've taken. Here, we're all working together. All right. A little bit about the professional development. Andy instructors receive support prior to teaching the course and throughout their first class, starting with a 2-day workshop. You can see here our dates are August 7th and 8th. That's currently what we're targeting for the next round to prepare instructors to teach after those dates. Then throughout the course in online seminars, there's digital resources that are shared with instructors, coaching calls. The WestEd study team is in regular communication, supporting both the technical side of implementation as well as instruction. We've imagined that this is probably up to 30 contact hours. That includes some brief surveys to track which units are being taught, and providing and we provide stipends for completing all of the surveys and participating in the observations and interviews. Lastly, the instructor role in feasibility, which is our current phase. The instructors, we ask that they participate in the professional learning and provide feedback, teach the course and provide feedback throughout that experience. And we provide stipends provided for completing those data collection activities and participating in the coaching calls. For next steps, we have a multitude of ways that we can be in touch, but my email is very short and very easy. You can reach out to dray@wested.org with your name, site. If you or your instructors are available to teach Andy this fall after those August 7th and 8th dates, and we'll share other information. We'll share a survey to gather other information just so that we can be fully prepared to support instructors. I'll stop sharing.
So Dan, we have, do you have time to take a couple questions?
I do, yes, and I have a couple of colleagues on the call as well, as long as there's time in the agenda.
Yeah, so we have another couple of minutes, certainly. So Kelly Davis from IU9, you have your hand raised. So if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yes, good morning. My question really was for Lauren. I wondered how many students you had that went through the course or the class at one time.
I had about 12 to 15 that were consistent. We had 2 students graduate our program, so they didn't actually finish the course with us. They graduated in April and mid-March. And then we did have a couple stop out due to transportation issues.
Okay, thank you.
If we have any other questions, feel free to put them in the chat or unmute yourself and ask them. We have several people from the WestEd team here, as well as Lauren, who has, the experience implementing this. I'm doing teacher wait time here, guys. Kelly, is that you raising your hand again, or?
No, it was me forgetting to lower my hand.
Okay. No problem. No problem. All right. Well,
I have a question for Lauren.
Go ahead.
Lauren, you shared data about the performance of your students having gone through the program. Could you talk a little bit about how that performance differed from your work with those students or students like them in the past?
They actually took their pre-tests on the CASAS in January, right before entering this program. These students had not been post-tested before in math, but typically we see people staying pretty stable. I have not really seen jumps of 14, 9, 12, or 6 typically in a math class. And the same students that I supported in their reading, they did not, they stayed the same or just did very slight jumps.
Okay. And you mentioned also, if I heard correctly, that you felt the program was really for 4s, but you had some gains with your 2s and 3s. So
I
maybe
did.
Dan, you could talk about, is it really for 4s? Because those
The-
are some pretty impressive gains.
The material is meant for 4s, but if you have a wide spread, your 4s, 5s can help your 2, 3s.
Gotcha. Okay.
But my 2, 3s felt very overwhelmed and struggled with a lot of the individual things for prep for class. And it took them way longer than the 45 minutes per lesson that you would typically see at a 4 or 5 level.
Thank you for that.
So we have a question in the chat from Cindy Line, and I appreciate you answering it, Dan. But I think her question was directed slightly towards her advisors. So it is a regular curriculum. It's not a supplemental distance learning. But you don't have to fully adopt one or the other in your program, Cindy. You could still purchase whatever it is you want to use as a digital curriculum. And then if you had a couple of teachers who wanted to participate in this, you could also do that. So it's not an either or, it's a plus and. So feel free to reach out. And Dan, if I could ask you to drop your contact information in the chat, just so that it's there if anybody wants to copy it right now. Also, this is being recorded and will be posted in a couple days. So, that's another way to, remind yourself you might want to show this recording to your teachers, something like that. Do we have any other questions for the West Ed team while they're here? So Allison, what would be the next steps for the students who need to take additional classes? Do they go through the program again? So is this iterative, Dan or Anne, or is this something that they do once and then they go do something else?
I can take a shot at this, Dan. This is a really good question, and one to which we don't have a clear answer yet. It wasn't designed to be done iteratively, but I think what we're finding is that there's enough richness and depth with the mathematics that, and the online system is adaptive, and so what content the students get served up changes depending on what they know. So we could certainly see that it could be done iteratively. We have not tested it that way yet.
And then we have a question about plans to develop the same sort of curriculum for lower levels. So maybe after your test, I don't know, Anne, I'll let you.
Not yet, but we've certainly heard the need. And the experience that Lauren described with the levels 2 and 3 students suggests that something more targeted at those levels would also be valuable. Just a little bit of context, this particular course and the project of which it is part is an Institute for Education Sciences funded research and evaluation project. And so that's a 5-year project, and we're committed to doing that. But and we're in year 3-ish. And so, we certainly would love to think about further building on this work in the lower levels, perhaps, or we've also heard some need for more advanced work as well. So yeah, we would love to continue thinking about that with you all in the next couple of years.
Thanks, Anne. So if I could just put one more little plug into our programs for this, I think this has been a really interesting experience for the teachers that participated, as Lauren indicated. And this is a 5-year project that West Ed is working on with Pennsylvania. to really pilot and develop this for, use with the rest of the adult ed across the nation. So, we're getting in on the ground floor of something really interesting. So I hope a couple of agencies out there at least would want to, get a group of teachers together. Individual teachers can also send an email to Dan, that's for sure. But if we could even get a couple agencies who had, 3 or 4 teachers who wanted to do this together to form their own little, community of practice. Lauren's shaking her head. She would have liked that, I think, if that happened at Northampton. Yeah. So just, food for thought. Think about it. You can contact me if you have questions, sort of related to, policy, for instance, not the time you spend instructing your students, but all the other time your teachers spend doing this would count as their 2% PD time towards their 2% PD time. So, I know that that's something that might be of interest to all of you. I'll give another minute to see if we have questions, and then we're gonna, Gretchen wants to know about the stipend. Right on, Gretchen. Anne and Dan, you're
Dan?
both, yeah, there you go.
So I'll just say we haven't decided on the stipend for the fall testing yet. We're still in the midst of deciding exactly what we're going to be asking, the specifics of it. But I can tell you that the current usability instructors, they're going to get about the same as the current usability instructors, or a little more. And I don't have that number at the top of my head. Dan, do you?
I do, yeah. And actually, Lauren, you can confirm it just in case I'm wrong. But I believe that the current stipend for usability is $500.
Yeah, so it'll
Lauren's
be
shaking her
500.
head, so I did not get that wrong.
It'll be 500 or perhaps a little bit more, because we're considering adding a couple of different measures on
Yeah.
top of what we're asking usability instructors to do.
Yeah, and we definitely want to recognize folks' time.
Absolutely.
Thank you. All right, so I think we're going to say thank you to WestEd. You're welcome to stay and listen to all our, policy and guidelines, and, wrapping up for the end of the year, and all of our, things that we need to tell our agencies now. But we really appreciate you joining us, and I'll be talking to you guys shortly.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, and thank you, Christine.
All right.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so onward. So the advisors and I thought it would be useful. Wow, my computer just freaked out. Thought it would be useful to kind of, as the end of year is approaching, perhaps remind you about some things that you need to do as the end of year approaches. So first up, Alice is going to talk to you about budget revisions.
Ooh, I know, it's pretty exciting. Please try to remain seated, Good morning, everyone. It's the fourth quarter, and that means 'tis the season for budget revisions. So this year, agencies will not need to submit budget revisions to eGrants. However, agencies that anticipate shifting more than the allowable amount must submit their proposed budget shifts to advisors via email for approval by the division. You have budget flexibility up to 10%. Let me explain that a bit, though. Budget revisions are not necessarily if you have simply spent less than the grant amount, but did not shift funds among function code or object code categories. Shifting funds from one function code object code combo to a different function code object code combo counts twice in the calculation to determine if you need to submit a request. Under expenditure with less than 10% shift does not require a budget revision. I know this can be a little confusing. Let me give you a few examples. Okay, so agency A, excuse me, lost several part-time teachers, coded 1691/102 during the year, and there was a delay in hiring new ones. So there's funding available from unused salaries. Those funds were shifted to the ABE program coordinator, assessment administrator, which would be coded 1691/101, to cover additional testing time. For budget revision purposes, there is no shifting of funds. It is the same function code, 1691, and the same object code series, the salary series 100s. Now, agency B lost several part-time teachers as well, coded 1691-102 during the year, and there was a delay in hiring new ones. So there was funding available from unused salaries. Those funds were shifted to the transition case manager, coded 2122/103. For budget revision purposes, there is a shift of funds between function codes from 1691 to 2122, though not between object codes. It's still salaries in the 100s. For one more agency, Agency C, they also lost several part-time teachers, again coded 1691-102 during the year. The agency chose to make one of the remaining part-time teachers a full-time staff member to split time between instruction, 1691, and in-house professional development specialist, 2200. This resulted in additional benefits costs as well. For budget revision purposes, any amount shifted from 1691 salary to 2200 salary, and any funds shifted from 1691 salary to 1691 benefits and 2200 benefits will be part of the calculation for determining if a budget revision is necessary. Okay, so to review the main point here, shifting funds from one function code option code combo to a completely different combo counts twice in the calculation to determine if you need to submit a request. Now, please be aware that FERs with shifts that meet budget revision threshold without prior email communication and division approval may be disallowed. So now is definitely the time to carefully review any budget shifting, get your revisions submitted early, sooner is better, just in case some clarification is needed, and do contact your advisor with any questions. Okay, that's all for me. I'll pass it on to Cheryl Parker. Ready, Cheryl?
Yes,
Let's,
thanks, Alice.
So let's
Okay,
hold up a
Michael.
minute, Cheryl, and see if we have any questions about
Absolutely.
budget revisions before we move on.
Maybe you can consider it and ask at the end if you think of one.
Go ahead, Victoria. Why don't you unmute yourself and ask your question? I see your hand raised.
Yeah, I just had a question about the counts twice part.
Okay.
In considering whether it's 10% or not,
Mhm.
both amounts, like in your example, both the amounts in the function code and in the benefits would count together in deciding if it's 10%. Was that your meaning?
So I'm not sure I fully understand your question.
Yeah, well,
Victoria.
I was trying
So
to
let me-
understand the counts twice
So let me,
part.
Alice, do you mind if I step in and give another,
Yes,
or
please
did you
do.
wanna, is it okay?
No, please do. Sorry, I'm actually coughing. Please do.
Okay, great.
Excuse me.
So let's maybe make the example simpler. Say you have a teacher, 1691-102, and you don't spend all that money, and you move it to, assessment, and that's still 1691, and it's still salaries, right? It's still your assessment administrator salary. So you're still 1691, you're still 100s. That's no movement.
Okay.
If you switch function codes, but not object codes, you're going to count it once towards your 10% because you've switched it in the function codes. If you switch the function code and the object code, that counts twice towards the 10%. So when you're adding it all up, you want to count that amount twice.
Okay, I think I understand now. Yeah,
Okay. If not,
Thank you.
contact your advisor, and we'll try to, maybe be clearer about it. Then I think that was clear, but if you have further questions, go to
yeah,
your
it
advisor.
is hard when you don't have the figures in front of you. So yeah,
Yeah, I get you.
Dawn
Yeah.
will talk to Cheryl about it.
Sure.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, you'll have time at the end if you have more questions as well. So let's move on. And Cheryl has some exciting information for us about fourth quarter QERs.
I mean, they're QERs. How could it not be exciting? Am I right?
You're right.
Good afternoon to everyone. I'm also going to work with examples. So let's consider some examples of correcting errors or making adjustments. Maybe you just change your mind for prior quarter entries. Example of an expense that was reported as too little. Let's say in some previous quarter, $1,000 had been entered as a line item expense, but it should have been 10,000. So we only have one quarter left, the fourth quarter. And so in the fourth quarter, you will add that additional $9,000 for that line item. Don't go back and fix it, just add it. Another example, let's say that, well, let me continue with that example. So let's say that it's the fourth quarter now, and you've realized, oh goodness, I should have been including $10,000 for my fourth quarter anyway. So now I have that correction of 9,000. So for the fourth quarter, that makes the entry 19,000, doesn't it? Moving on to another example, if too much had been entered. Let's say, for example, that 20,000 was entered as an expense for every previous quarter, but it should have only been 2,000 for each quarter. So here we are in the fourth quarter, knowing that the entry should be 2,000. And oh no, a correction of negative 54,000. That would be a negative 18,000 for each of the 3 quarters previously. So now the fourth quarter entry would be a negative 52,000. So that your poor advisor doesn't flip out, it might be a good idea to note on the email what's going on. Just make a quick note when you submit the fourth quarter of any changes, corrections, or adjustments. And just a side note here, be sure to check your guidelines for those floors and ceilings. You know, those must spend at least floors and cannot exceed ceilings. The fourth quarter cumulative totals will provide the opportunity for you to check your expenses to ensure compliance with the guidelines before you prepare that FER. Christine, back to you.
Thanks, Cheryl. So I think, Cheryl, can I ask a question before the field can certainly ask questions as well, but I want to make sure I understand. So corrections, if you find you made a mistake in a prior quarter, you don't want them to change the tabs that they've already submitted. You want them to sort of make the totality of changes in the fourth quarter tab on the spreadsheet. Is that correct?
That's correct, Christine. And
Okay.
I was told the rationale for that was so that they match what had been submitted on the FAIs. I don't get involved with the FEIs. That's
Right.
just what I was told.
Okay, well, at any rate, that's our procedure. So please don't go back and alter the prior tabs, make any corrections, by doing the math on the fourth quarter tab. So do we have any questions specifically about the QERs? Okay, I don't see any. Thank you, Cheryl. I'm just going to briefly now talk about FER preparation. Amanda will give you more detail about FERs in the June webinar, but I thought there were some things you might want to start thinking about now, even though they're a little ways off. So I think you should start gathering the information you need to complete it. You may have had emails back and forth with your advisor about equipment that was purchased and that you had to get approval for. You might have had emails about different changes or purchases during the year. So I think you should kind of start gathering all of that together, as you think about your FER preparation, and don't wait until the day before the FER is due to be like, oh, where was that email? How much was that? I think, another thing that is often problematic on the FERs is the local match section. So one of the things that is often lacking is the description. You want to make sure that you describe the basis, right? And when I say the basis, what I mean is, say you're saying staff salary. Say it's, the salary for the administrator is being used as local match because you're paying it out of local funds instead of paying it out of our grant funds. You can't just write, executive director, $10,000. You have to tell us what the basis is. So is it a portion of their time? What is their rate per hour? We have to be able to understand the figures that you put in. If it's, space rental, what was the square footage and the cost per square foot? If it's a percentage of somebody's time, tell us what the basis is. We have to be able to understand it from the description. And what I would say is, in general, more information is better than less information. We don't want extraneous information, but I think more is better. And another thing that I think, and I don't think this is necessarily our fault or your fault or anyone's fault, but I think the calculating career services is problematic. So I would recommend you start getting your documentation together now about how you're going to calculate that if you haven't been doing it all along. The sections of the guidelines that deal with career services calculations is 613.3.1.4. Wow. And in Appendix A, AA 1.3.1. Just to remind you, the 5 career services that apply to adult education. So there are more than 5 career services, but the ones that apply to Title II are outreach, intake, and orientation, providing initial assessment, referrals and coordination of activities with other programs and services, provision of information and program cost to other workforce services, and the provision of information on the availability of supportive services. So sort of like referrals for barrier support. So you need to figure out a way. I know that some of these things cross function codes and object codes. And so, it's not like all of your assessment time is going to count. So if you have an assessment administrator, you can't just say, oh, I'm going to put all their time in career services, because it's only initial testing. It's not all testing. So I really think you need to start looking at ways to accurately report this. We report this to the feds. And if they don't, think that we're being accurate, that's, something that could, trigger a corrective action for us. So I really urge you to try to spend some time thinking about how you can best calculate this. I see we have a hand raised. Feel free to unmute and ask your question.
Hi, Christine. I have a question about local match.
Oh, sure.
So I think at the beginning of the year, a form was shared to document facilities match. And so I've been using that form every quarter when I fill out, every quarter when we get ready to submit our quarterly report. I fill out the facilities match, send it to the facilities manager, and then they sign off on it, and then I have it. I just keep a, record. Is that something I should be submitting at the end of the year to my advisor, or just keep it on hand?
So you just have to keep local documentation. You don't have to submit it. You just have to have it if we ask for it. Okay, you're welcome, Sue. So again, Amanda will provide more specific guidance on FERs in June, but I just wanted to kind of give you a head start to get started on these things, so you're not at the last minute, scrambling to get them done. It is also that time of year that you want to start looking at cleaning up your data, right? We're approaching June. eData closes 14 days after the end of the program year. So I don't know if that's the 15th or the 17th this year. I don't know, when the weekends happen, but it's coming up. It's coming up in a month and a half. So, things to do to clean up your data, look at your data checks. Again, to remind you that you get those data checks monthly, but you can also run them from the template at any time that you want on the data check page. Not all data check items are on the monthly data check that MIS sends you. There are additional data checks that might be useful for your program that are in the template. Some that I think I've noticed where there are some ongoing issues, the DL checkbox, right? So if you look at your data and it says you have, distance learners without the DL checkbox or DL checkbox with no distance hours, right? You want to double check and make sure that your data entry is correct there. Special needs, even one marked incorrectly is 100% wrong, right? So if you have somebody that you've marked special needs, but you've given them a valid pretest, they are not considered special needs for our purposes. You should probably look at the special needs policy. There's a whole bunch of criteria for being, checked as special needs. And if you have somebody that truly is special needs, you need to set goals for them. So another data check item that sometimes appears is special needs students without goals set. So you want to double check all of those, clean those up. PA secure ID near matches. Let's get that number to 0. Let's get that number to 0. And then there are quite often data check items where there's like an ex-offender institution community mismatch. Again, those may be problems and may not be problems, but pull up the raw data, find out the names, and figure out if you have or have not made a data entry error for those. This is the time to really start fixing those data entry errors. Please enter any intakes that you haven't yet entered. We'd like to count all of the people we have served. So anybody who's come in and taken the time to fill out an intake, please, get them in the system before the end of the year. And, even though you should be post-testing all along as people, reach their, the hours that are in the policies, think about trying to, make sure that you're up to date on your post-testing as we approach the end of the year, so we can show as many MSGs as possible. I'm not suggesting post-testing people that have 10 hours. So please don't say Christine said post-test everybody. I did not, but just really start looking at your student hours and whether the teachers think somebody is ready to possibly show again. And then go ahead and make sure you get that all cleaned up. And the same goes for the family literacy assessments as well. Another really big issue last year was the data entry around your IETs. So this only applies to a small portion of you, but it may apply to more of you later. So I'm going to just go over it. So many agencies did this wrong last year. So number one, the class names. All IET class names should end with the letters IET. And you can see page 16 of the manual and glossary for more directions on that. Special program type. The special program type chosen should be either integrated education and training with credential or integrated education and training without credential. And those directions are in the manual and glossary, page 17. What I'll say is IET trumps any other kind of special program type. So if it's an IET, but it's also a distance program, we want you to choose IET. So check your special program types and make sure that you have them checked. And then the participation and credential outcomes. So agencies with IET classes need to keep track of the outcomes using the agency specific goals section. So if you haven't done this yet, go into eData, create a goal named Complete IET in the agency specific goal section, and then assign that goal to every student in your IET, right? So every student in your IET should have the goal of completing the IET, and then you can enter the set and met dates. And you can see page 74 of the manual and glossary for more directions on that. For IET with credential classes, you have to do the same thing. You have to create an agency specific goal that says, obtain a credential, and then you have to assign that to every student in that credential bearing IET. And again, if you have questions about this, I think probably your best bet for questions about how to enter things into eData might be to start with Michael and Steve at eData Tech Support, and they'll tell you whether they think that your question rises to the level of something your advisor needs to answer. And the reason this is so important, and I know it sounds like we're being picky, but it's really important because we use this for reporting. Right. So we use this for our federal reporting. So we don't want to have a bunch of people in IET that we don't report as having been in an IET class. We want to get credit for every single one of them. So check your data entry and do what you can about getting it, corrected. And a final reminder about your eData: if it's not in eData, it didn't happen. So if you don't enter things into eData, but you say, oh, but we had 5 IETs, or, we had all these distance hours. If you didn't put it in eData, from our perspective, we can't report it, and it didn't happen. And I know that sounds kind of harsh, but that is the reality. I think somebody had their hand up, but now it looks like they put it down. So if there is somebody that has a question, feel free to unmute and ask.
It was me, Christine. This is Kelly Davis.
Hi, Kelly.
So it sounds like to me what you're saying is, please tell me if I'm wrong. Get it in eData, even if it's past the 14 days. Sometimes we go back and we say, oh my goodness, I forgot that. I didn't put it in eData, but now it's past the 14 days. We're going to get in trouble. It sounds like you're saying put it in there.
Yep.
Rather than worry
Put
about
it in.
Days.
Well, I mean, we're going to look at the 14 days data entry, but do you want your advisor to, come and monitor you and find that you've got data you're not entering at all, or data that you just didn't get in within 14 days? I mean, one of those is a much more serious thing than the other.
Yep.
Yes.
Exactly.
So thanks for bringing that up, Kelly. That's a good one. Thank you. And I have one more end of the year reminder. Last year, I think we had some people who didn't get credit for completing staff induction because they didn't follow the process that was set up. So there's a form that the administrator has to sign off on. Contact your consultant to make sure that you have followed all the steps to get credit for all of your staff inductions. Let's get that in before the end of the year. To get credit for courses, teachers and participants have to complete the course evaluation. No evaluation, no credit. Check and make sure for those of you who need Act 48 credit, please make sure that your PPID number is correct. When I upload those into PERMS, they kick back if there's not a match between the PPID and the name. So double check that you have that correct in the portal. And that'll make getting your credit go much easier, much more easily. And the other one that is kind of a crossover between PD and data entry is assessment initials. The advisors will use that report on who was giving assessments where you put the initials in. So make sure it's not the data quality specialist or the data entry person's initials, but the person who actually gave the assessment. It should be their initials. So that's just another reminder. These are all things that we saw last year, and we just thought we'd present them to you today. I can, the advisors and I can field some questions now if we have them. We have a couple of minutes left. All right, any last words from any of the advisors before we log off?
Oh dear, my last words. Enjoy this spring, summer, whatever we're moving into here. Have a great week. That's about it from me.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, everybody. Well, thanks for joining today. I hope some of you consider signing up for the math curriculum study, and we'll look forward to seeing you next month.
Thank you,
Have a good day.
everybody.
Bye,
Thanks.
everybody.